The sound came before the light, a low, hollow roar that rolled through the mist-cloaked valleys of Boone County, Kentucky, just past midnight. The kind of sound that doesn't belong in the quiet hours between Sunday and Monday. The kind that makes dogs bark, lights flicker on, and the human heart hesitate for reasons it can't explain. At 12:17 a.m., Air Cargo Flight 705 went silent over the green-black sprawl of northern Kentucky. In the control tower, an operator leaned closer to his radar screen, the blip vanishing just as it crossed a patch of woodland less than 3 miles from the Cincinnati/Northern Kentucky International Airport. Within minutes, emergency frequencies crackled alive, but all that came through was static. When the first responders arrived, the trees were burning. Not in roaring flames, but in strange, vertical streaks, as though the forest itself had been clawed open. The air smelled of jet fuel, wet soil, and something metallic, something unnatural. And in the middle of it all, the remains of a Lockheed L-100 Hercules cargo aircraft, nose buried deep into the Kentucky earth. For crew members. No survivors. No black box signal. By dawn, the crash site had become a maze of smoke, twisted metal, and quiet confusion. Federal agents arrived before sunrise. Their jackets didn't read FAA or NTSB. They were plain, dark blue, unmarked. They spoke to no one. Sheriff David Harlan, who'd been awake since 2 a.m., stood at the perimeter watching them. "You'd think the Pentagon fell out of the sky," he muttered, coffee steaming in the cold air. His deputy, a young woman named Elise Grant, said nothing, just watched as one of the agents slipped something metallic into a sealed case and turned away. The official story would later say the plane was carrying industrial medical supplies. But the manifest told another story, if anyone could ever find it. 3 days later, when the county coroner's team was still sorting through debris, something emerged that shouldn't have been there. In the tail section, where only cargo should have been, search crews found a shredded seat belt and human tissue embedded in the aluminum wall. The plane was not supposed to carry passengers. 5 bodies, Elise whispered when she saw the recovery list. Not 4. And that's when the story stopped being an accident. 2 counties away, in a small motel outside Florence, a retired airfield technician named Henry Rakes watched the news with shaking hands. He'd worked maintenance on that very aircraft 6 months earlier. He knew its tail number by heart. And he knew that cargo plane had a secret, one he'd never written in any logbook. It wasn't cargo they were moving, he told a local reporter who'd come sniffing around. It was people. 1 person, actually. Handcuffed. No record. No name. The reporter never published the interview. 2 days later, his car was found abandoned near the Ohio River. Elise Grant couldn't sleep. She kept seeing the photograph, taken by one of the volunteer firemen before federal agents confiscated all evidence. It showed a section of the fuselage scorched black, but behind the melted panels was something painted over in faded white letters. Project Mirror. She didn't understand what it meant. But when she asked her captain, he said only this: "Forget you ever saw that, Grant. Some cargo isn't meant to be found." That night, she drove to the airport hangar where wreckage was being stored. She wasn't supposed to be there. But through a narrow gap between tarps, she saw something that stopped her heart: a small child's shoe, still tied, covered in soot, tagged evidence number 54. The cargo plane wasn't just moving freight. On the 6th night after the crash, the control tower at CVG received a signal. Faint. Garbled. Coming from the last recorded coordinates of Flight 705. The transmission lasted 14 seconds. A child's voice whispered through static. "We're still up here." Then silence. Perfect. "We go deeper now," same cinematic, investigative tone. Fade in from the static of that last radio whisper. The investigation was supposed to end when the wreckage was cleared. But the echoes never stopped. At 2:11 a.m. on November 4th, exactly 1 week after Flight 705 vanished from radar, an air traffic controller named Mason Klein was the only one left in the tower. The night was dead quiet. Then the console flickered. "Signal detected," CVG 705. The same call sign. The same frequency. Static hissed across the speaker. Mason froze, his coffee trembling in his hand. The monitor pulsed with a faint green blip, 12 miles south of the crash site. Then a voice. Soft. Mechanical. Distorted. Runway clear, requesting permission to land. Mason's eyes widened. The flight had been buried, catalogued, and declared lost. He turned off the receiver, but the voice came again. Louder. We never made it home. He quit the next morning. At dawn, Elise Grant arrived at the hangar to find federal agents tearing down the perimeter tents. She'd been pulled off the case, officially. But unofficially, she wasn't done. When no one was looking, she slipped into the evidence trailer. It smelled like oil and burned rubber. She moved fast. Metal crates, tagged fragments, melted glass, and then she saw it, a small orange box, half melted, labeled CVG 705, cockpit voice recorder. The official report said the black box was destroyed beyond recovery. But this one was intact. She hid it under her jacket and walked out into the Kentucky fog. That night, in her small apartment, Elise connected the recorder to an old playback terminal. The tape hissed. Then came the voices. Capt. Larson. Pressure's dropping again. Get that panel sealed. CO pilot. Altitude holding. Wait, what the hell is that? Metallic distortion. Capt. Larson. Is that a reflection? Unidentified voice. Don't look at it. Screaming. Instruments failing. End of recording. Elise hit pause. Her pulse hammered. The third voice wasn't supposed to exist.
It was calm, cold, and it came from inside the cockpit. Elise's next stop was the airport archives. Hidden under 30 years of dust and paperwork, she found it, a classified maintenance log, stamped property of Miratech Defense Division. The entries were cryptic. January 14th. Test subject stabilized. Flight simulation approved. January 27th. Reversal experiment failed. Subject unresponsive to own reflection. February 3rd. Cargo containment breach risk. High. February 4th. Authorization granted for airborne disposal. Her stomach turned. They hadn't been moving cargo, they'd been getting rid of it. At 10:43 that night, someone knocked on her door. A slow, deliberate knock, 3 times. Through the peephole, she saw a man in a dark coat. No badge. No name tag. Just a small metallic object in his hand. A mirror shard, no bigger than a coin. You have something that doesn't belong to you, he said. If you play that tape again, you'll see them. When she didn't respond, he pressed the shard against the door. For a split second, Elise saw her own reflection in it, only it wasn't moving like she was. It smiled first. By the time she opened the door, he was gone. 2 nights later, the black box started playing by itself. She'd unplugged it. She'd buried it under her bed. But still, the faint whine of a transmission crawled through the static. Elise, runway clear. Final approach. The voice wasn't the captain's anymore. It was hers. The screen flickered. A line of text appeared on her terminal that hadn't been there before. You were on that flight. Her breath caught. She stepped back, shaking her head. But as she looked into the dark TV screen beside her, she saw the cockpit, burning, reflected in her own eyes. By morning, she was gone. Her apartment door was open, the black box still playing, a faint looping voice repeating every 30 seconds. Final descent. Do you copy? Investigators found her car parked near runway 3C, the same one Flight 705 was supposed to land on. In the passenger seat was her service pistol and a small piece of paper. 3 words, written in red marker. We're still up here. Absolutely. We descend now, into the storm where truth meets silence. The last and final part. Emotional, cinematic, eerie, and deeply human. The crash site had been buried twice, once under the earth, and once under government silence. But some things refused to stay hidden. It began at sunrise. A farmer, 60 miles east of Lexington, found something glinting in his field. It was a metal panel, blackened and warped, with the faint stenciled words, CVG 705, Miratech property. When he touched it, he swore he heard whispering. And somewhere far away, a radar tower lit up with a single ghost signal. Agent Warren Hale had been chasing ghost stories his entire career, from vanishing aircraft to missing tapes. But this one felt different. Elise Grant's disappearance had left a mark. Her notes, half-burnt, spoke of mirrors that record memory, and cargo that breathes. He didn't believe in the supernatural. He believed in cover-ups. At 2:15 a.m., the same time Mason Klein reported the phantom call, Hale sat inside the cold control tower, staring at the radar. Nothing moved. Nothing blinked. Then, a flicker. A single green pulse, moving low and slow across the screen. Ident. CVG 705 Alt. 900 feet dest. Unknown. He leaned closer. The transponder was active. Someone, or something, was flying that plane. Tower to 705, you're not supposed to exist, he muttered into the mic. The reply came instantly. Neither are you. The next morning, a cleanup team found an abandoned hangar 30 miles south. Inside was Elise's car, covered in frost, untouched. And there she was. Alive. Barely breathing. Her eyes open, but blank. The doctors called it shock-induced paralysis. But when Hale saw her, he noticed something the others didn't. She was moving, not her body, but her reflection. In the mirror beside the hospital bed, her mirrored self was mouthing words she couldn't speak. They didn't die in the crash. Hale dug deeper. He broke into Miratech's decommissioned R&D wing, now dust-choked and silent. What he found shouldn't have existed. Rows of test chambers lined the walls, each holding fractured pieces of mirrored glass, all humming faintly with electromagnetic current. In the center of the room, a black monitor looping an old training video. Project Mirror, Phase 3, Cognitive Reflection Storage Testing, Objective. Transfer neural signatures into mirror surfaces for non-organic preservation. They weren't experimenting with cargo. They were experimenting with souls. And Flight 705 was their disposal run. That night, the black box started broadcasting again. Not from Elise's apartment, from the crash site itself. Rescue crews reported seeing flickering lights in the fog, hearing cockpit chatter. One pilot even swore he saw the 705's tail lights glide across the treeline. But when they got closer, there was nothing. Only scorched mud and silence. Then, through the static of every nearby radio frequency, the same voice bled through. Runway clear. Final approach. We're still up here. 3 weeks later, Elise opened her eyes. The hospital was quiet. Her wrists trembled. A doctor leaned over her. You've been asleep for 21 days. Her throat was dry. Where's the tape? She whispered. Hale handed her a sealed evidence bag. Inside was the melted recorder. She smiled faintly, then frowned. This isn't it. He froze. What do you mean? The real one still talks. They went back together, to the site. Midnight air. Cold wind through the grass. Hale placed the black box on the ground. Nothing. Just the whine of insects. Then it began to hum. The dirt around it shifted. From beneath the soil, a shape rose, a metal frame, twisted, burned, dripping with fog. The nose of Flight 705. The voice returned. Captain to tower. Approach vector confirmed.
Elise stepped closer. In the mirrored surface of the cockpit window, she saw them, the entire crew, staring back, pale and motionless. And behind them, her own reflection, seated in the pilot's chair. Hale screamed for her to stop, but Elise pressed her hand against the glass. The fog swallowed her whole. The radio blared one final message. Runway clear. We're coming home. Then silence. No crash. No explosion. Just the faint echo of turbines fading into the night. By dawn, the wreckage was gone. No plane. No Elise. Only one thing remained, the black box, still humming softly. When Hale lifted it, He saw his reflection in its scorched metal. And this time, it blinked. 6 months later, a new flight route opened through northern Kentucky. Its designation, 705A. Every night, at exactly 2:11 a.m., the control tower logs an unidentified radar blip, following the same approach pattern. No one answers its call sign. No one dares. Because the last time someone did, they never came back.